Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Celestial Tree. I'm an astrologer, intuitive reader and a soul psychologist as well. And today we are going to be chatting about the upcoming full moon happening at 23 degrees of Libra on the 13th of April. So it is a really good idea to check your natal charts for any planets or points that are around 23 degrees of cardinal signs. So Libra, Aries, Capricorn and Cancer, because that might be where you feel the effects of the full moon the most. Before I get started, here is a gentle reminder. If you would like a reading from me, you can book with me on my website at celestialhealingrealm.com. And remember to subscribe to my channel for more horoscopes and astrology updates. I have not uploaded in a few weeks. I was on holiday during eclipse season, so which was crazy, but I had a good time. And I've also moved my office into this room, so hopefully you guys are okay with the change of scenery. I feel like I needed like fresh energy. I don't know, it's Aries season, so so this full moon in Libra is a really important one. It is wrapping up a 6-month cycle that started around last year, October 2nd. So if you have a diary, well, even if you don't have a diary, I like to look through my photos to kind of see what's going on, what was going on back then. But take a look back at last year, October, and see kind of what began for you around that time. Some of the key things with this full moon, it is in a T-square to one of the malefic planets, Mars. A T-square is one of the more tense aspects in astrology. It's basically when two opposing planets form a square with a third planet, and it can signify a tension between the energies that those planets carry. In this case, the full moon is in a T-square with Mars, which if you have a T-square in the sky, Mars is one of the planets that you don't want involved in that, because the tension and the conflict and the potential disharmony that T-squares can indicate is kind of amplified when you have a disruptive planet like Mars in the picture. Mars will be nearing its end, the end of its time in Cancer at the time of this full moon, where it went retrograde a few months ago. Whenever we have a full moon in Libra, I always see it as kind of like a reminder of the endless battle between balancing our personal power and our relationship with ourselves versus how we interact and how we relate with others. Our needs versus the needs of others. So how we define those needs, how we meet those needs, and how well our connections with others are meeting our individual needs as well. I do feel like this full moon being in a T-square with Mars over in Cancer might make this full moon quite an emotional one. One where we're faced with our feelings quite strongly. Cancer also rules over the past as well, so there could be some things that come up from the past that needs to be addressed and released. Potentially things related to our personal needs, our relationships, and our emotional wellness as well. Oh, I almost forgot to mention that this full moon will be conjunct Chiron. They're at like the same degree. If you don't know anything about Chiron, Chiron in astrology is very closely related to our deepest emotional and psychological wounds that can stem from trauma and from things that we go through in early life. And it kind of represents where we hold pain and where we carry quite a lot of pain. As an astrologer that focuses quite largely on healing and empowerment, working with Chiron and exploring Chiron placements with clients is quite an integral part of my practice. I do see it as a place where we can pull a huge amount of power from by exploring where we feel the most disempowered. So if you guys are ever wanting to explore the deepest parts of yourself and kind of look into your Chiron placement, then don't hesitate to book with me and I will walk you through that process, because it can be quite heavy to try and do on your own. So anyway, The fact that this full moon is conjunct Chiron does indicate that some of those emotions and those issues that might surface around the full moon will most likely be things that we have carried with us through childhood, and they still kind of like have an effect on us up to this point. So a great way to work with the energy of this full moon in particular is by doing some healing work, some shadow work, and being really open and kind of unresistant to the things that need to be addressed and released. So however best you emotionally cleanse yourself, it could be like sport, it could be journaling, it could be just having a good old cry. Put that into practice around the 13th of April. With that being said, I am going to give you guys your horoscopes for the full moon in Libra, and please do remember to listen to both your sun sign and your rising sign as well. Aries suns and Aries risings. This full moon in Libra will happen in your 7th house of one-to-one connections, relationships and contracts. So it's Aries season right now. The focus has largely been on you. Happy birthday to all the Aries as well. But this full moon provides you with an opportunity to check in on your one-to-one connections. So I mentioned earlier in the video that this full moon is in a T-square with Mars over in Cancer in your 4th house of family, home and the past. So there could be some issues with your one-to-one connections that stem from your past or stem from your family dynamics. And these issues are issues that might be reflecting when it comes to how you relate to others, basically. This could be like romantic relationship wise, it could be business wise, it could be how you relate to your friendships as well. This full moon is calling you to examine some of those things and try and release any baggage that you might be holding on to so that you can approach your relationships with a fresh perspective. You could be releasing a relationship around this time and kind of letting go of a connection, or you could become aware of something that needs to be addressed within your own personal relationships, and you might open up and you might be vulnerable about that with like a partner. It could even be a business partner as well. This full moon is also conjunct Chiron. Chiron represents our deepest wounds and where we felt the most disempowered. So there might be like a specific experience that you're reminded of around the time of this full moon, or you're triggered by, and you're kind of given an opportunity to discuss that and sort of work through it. Hopefully not on your own. It does feel like quite a heavy and emotional full moon for you, Aries. So try to lean on some of the people that you trust in your life in order to work through whatever comes up. And what I would say is focus on healthy emotional release, and then you should be able to move through the rest of the year feeling emotionally lighter and much more self-aware in regards to how you approach your one-to-one connections with the people in your life. Taurians, Taurus suns and Taurus risings. This full moon in Libra will happen in your 6th house of physical health, habits, work and daily routines. So Taurus, this full moon brings with it an opportunity to examine your health in a new way. You could see the return of an old but small health issue. And if that does happen, try to consider if it is returning due to stress or due to like a lack of self-care. I know you guys are very busy, but I think it's important to put your health as a priority and make sure that you are taking care of you. This full moon is also conjunct Chiron, and Chiron represents our deepest emotional wounds. So there could be something that comes up for you around the time of this full moon, something related to a past experience, something that kind of maybe triggers you in a way, and you become aware of just how significant this particular life event was for you. You might even feel like, even though it's something from the past, it might be something that is still affecting you and impacting how you approach your work and your health, and also your relationship to productivity and perfectionism as well, because that is also something that the sixth house does rule over. Lots to consider around this particular full moon. If you do feel like you know, you have this overwhelming urge to kind of deal with the stuff that comes up for you on your own and kind of like isolate yourself from everyone, this actually might be the only time the only time that I would actually encourage that. Take some time out for yourself, work through what it is that you need to work through. Of course, if doing it in isolation is not working out, then do lean on somebody that you trust. But definitely just with where the planets are, working through it on your own might give you a lot more clarity. This could also be a time where you do finish up a work project that you might have started back in October last year, or you could see the wrapping up of a job that you've had for a while, and you feel like this need to kind of go out there and try something new work-wise. So whatever happens around the time of this full moon, remember to try and take care of yourself as much as you can. And if you need to release any emotions, please try to do so in a healthy way. Gemini suns and my fellow Gemini risings, this full moon in Libra will happen in your 5th house of all things pleasure, romance, creative expression, hobbies and children. So this is quite an intense full moon for you Geminis. I mentioned earlier that it is in a T-square to Mars over in your 2nd house of income and resources. It does feel like around the time of this full moon in Libra there might be something fun related or something children related that you might want to spend money on, but you simply do not have the freedom to do it, or at least that's how it feels. It does feel like there is some tension between maybe some of the plans that you have for yourself long term, and the other side of kind of wanting to enjoy the moment and seek pleasure in the now. But there could be like a lack of funds or restriction when it comes to your resources and actually being able to actualize those long-term plans and those pleasure pursuits as well. It might not sound like much when I'm saying it, but it can be quite a tough spot to be in, especially when you have issues surrounding like money and resources and security that stem from childhood. This full moon is conjunct Chiron as well, which does represent our deepest emotional and psychological wounds. So there might be something from your past that comes up, and it could be related to child rearing if you have children. It could be related to creativity. It could relate to dating as well. Some type of wound from the past that resurfaces in order for you to acknowledge and deal with it at the time of this full moon. It might get a little bit heavy and it might get a little bit emotional, but try not to shy away from it. Try to lean on the people around you for support, and focus on healthy emotional release if it comes to that. This is also a time where you could finish up a creative project that you may have started in October last year. So that's really good. Hopefully it ends smoothly if that is something that comes up for you. This could also be a time where if you have children, there might be something going on with them that requires you to kind of support and be there for them in some way. Whatever happens around the time of this full moon, make sure that you have good people around you so you don't feel too inundated and too overwhelmed as well. Cancerians, Cancer suns and Cancer risings. This full moon in Libra will happen in your fourth house of home, family, and the past. I mentioned earlier that this full moon in Libra is in a T-square with the planet Mars, which is over in your sign at the moment. First things first, there does seem to be some tension between maybe your home and family life and your public and professional life. It could be related to work-life balance, but I feel like with this T-square with Mars, it does feel a lot more personal than work-life balance. There might be some things that come up from the past around this time, potentially related to family or related to your public reputation as well. I'm thinking of Chiron in that 10th house space, that makes you feel a little bit triggered. And I feel like with Mars having been in your sign for the past few months, it does feel like it has brought up a lot of frustrations and kind of issues when it comes to different parts of your personal life. This does feel like a full moon where you might be feeling some of those same frustrations, and you might even feel a little bit emotional as well when it comes to confronting things from your past and maybe discussing some of those things with members of your family or your chosen family or your household. This could also be a time where you do settle a problem within the family or within your household, potentially an issue that started last year, October. And this full moon could kind of signify an end to it. It could be like a conflict, or it could be something related to the household. Either way, this is a full moon for emotional release, so it's a time for being open about how you're feeling. Even if it seems scary, do try and focus on your emotional well-being, and hopefully after the full moon you'll be feeling a lot lighter as you progress through the rest of the year. Leo suns and Leo risings. This full moon in Libra will fall in your third house of local travel, community, learning, communication, and siblings. So this full moon is also in a T-square with Mars over in your 12th house of solitude and mental health. So this does feel like a full moon where if you do have siblings, there could be some issues that kind of arise and make you want to retreat a little bit and kind of decompress from the world. It might be that you're spending some time with your siblings and something happens that kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Chiron is very, very present at this full moon, and Chiron represents our deepest wounds, both like emotional and psychological as well. So there could be something that comes up around this full moon that reminds you of one of your wounds, and it might make you want to take some time out for yourself. I feel like if you don't have siblings, this could still happen, but it might not necessarily happen as a result of you spending time with your siblings if you don't have them. This could also be a time where you might be making a lot of short trips somewhere in your local community, and not by choice. It doesn't feel like something you want to do. It might feel like you really want to stay at home and just chill, but there are stuff that needs to be done, and it does look like there could be some burnout on the horizon as well. So please do remember to try and find some time to rest and make sure that you are taking care of your well-being. This could also be a time where you might be wrapping up a cycle. It could be a learning cycle, either something that you started in kind of a structured way, like in a classroom with a course or something, or it could be something that you were looking into and researching in your own time, something that is of personal interest to you. This could be something that you did start around October last year, and that is kind of coming to a close around this full moon. If you do find yourself burnt out or emotional around the time of this full moon, try to focus on rest and try to focus on the release of those emotions. So process whatever needs to be processed, release what needs to be released, and get things off your chest if you have to. And then you can move through the rest of the year feeling a lot more lighter emotionally and a lot more centered and grounded as well. Virgos, Virgo suns and Virgo risings. This full moon in Libra is happening in your second house of income, talent and self-worth. This full moon is also conjunct Chiron over in your 8th house of shared resources and the psyche. In addition, with it being in a T-square with Mars over in your 11th house. So Virgos, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I don't think that helps. That helps anything, but this full moon does feel like quite an intense full moon for you. There could be some issues that come up in relation to finances. You might be sitting down and revisiting your budget just to make sure that everything is kind of in order, and you could also end up paying something off as well, which is a good thing, because that's kind of one less thing to have on your mind. With Chiron so present in this full moon, Chiron represents our deepest emotional and psychological wounds that we might carry with us from childhood. With Chiron so present at this full moon, it does feel like you could become aware of something psychological, perhaps a wound from childhood that is still affecting you now in present in regards to like your own self-worth. It could be related to resources or security or something along those lines. There could be something like a blind spot or a part of your psyche that you kind of always knew it was there, but you discover it and you kind of realize that it is having an effect on your self-esteem and your own perception of yourself as well. If that does happen, what I would say is try and reach out to a friend. It's got to be somebody that you trust, and focus on processing some of your emotions, or even just have an event with somebody who has the capacity to listen, would be a really good way to work with the energy of this full moon. Emotional release is needed every once in a while, and this is actually a really good time to kind of let it all out in a way. Try and consider if there are ways that you can kind of alter your financial situation or your self-esteem by thinking of like some out of the box ideas. I always like to kind of remind people that there are solutions just outside of our perception. If we try and think about things in a different way, then we open up ourselves to a whole new way of solving things. So do try and keep that in mind around the time of this full moon. Librans, Libra suns and Libra risings. This full moon in Libra is happening in your first house of identity, self, life path and physical body. This full moon is conjunct Chiron in your 7th house of relationships and contracts. So it does feel like there is probably some conflict around the time of this full moon. This could be an internal conflict. If you're in a partnership, there might be some difficult conversations to have in regards to your needs, your partner's needs and your past experiences as well. Chiron represents our deepest emotional and psychological wounds. Sometimes there are wounds that we carry with us from childhood, and they have an impact and an effect on us in the present. This does feel like a time where you might become aware of something quite deep and quite personal, that might be having an effect on your current one-to-one connections with others. If you don't have a partner, this could be a time where you are wrapping up a cycle that began around October last year. A cycle where you are focusing more on yourself, your own needs and your own divine life path in a way. It does feel like this is the peak or like the culmination of some of those efforts. I feel like you've been doing a lot of work on yourself and on your life, and it does feel like the peak or the end of that cycle, which is a good thing. But with Chiron so close to this full moon, it does seem like there could be something that resurfaces from your early years in order for you to kind of address and release whatever it is that you're holding on to. If you feel emotional or even a little bit triggered around the time of this full moon, especially if it's somebody close to you that triggers you, try not to avoid those feelings. Try to express them and release them in a really healthy way. And if it calls for it, have a discussion with somebody close to you about what's going on and how you're feeling in order to kind of help you process, so that you can move through the rest of the year feeling lighter emotionally. Scorpios, Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings. This full moon in Libra will happen in your 12th house of rest, spirituality, mental health, and what is hidden, also the subconscious as well. So Scorpios, this full moon is bringing with it an opportunity for you to really examine your mental state, especially as it pertains to your work life. Are you in a job that's beneficial to your mental health? Are you resting and decompressing properly and healthily when you're away from work? In your quest of kind of being of service and being the best worker that you can, are you neglecting the service that you need to give to yourself? This does feel like a time where those questions are going to be quite prominent in your mind around the time of this full moon. I would say when it comes to asking yourself these questions, try to be really, really like reflective and honest, and try not to kind of suppress your emotions in relation to these things. You might have this overwhelming feeling of kind of wanting to be alone and kind of deal with some of the heightened emotions that might come up in solitude or in isolation. I would opt for exploring these things on your own and then processing and kind of talking about it with somebody that you trust. It could be a therapist, or it could be a really good friend, or it could be a family member as well. I think if you try to deal with it on your own, you are looking at a potential breakdown. We definitely would not want that, Scorpios. I feel like you guys have already been navigating so much lately, and this is something that I do feel like you should be working with somebody else on. With that being said, it is a really good time to kind of take some time to yourself and recharge, and make sure that you are prioritizing things like sleep and just other things that help your well-being. The next full moon in May will be in your sign, so you're going to need your strength for that as well. So try to keep that in mind around the time of this full moon. Sagittarians, Sagittarius suns and Sagittarius risings. This full moon in Libra will happen in your 11th house of friends, groups, and long-term goals for the future. So this does feel like a full moon that can kind of see you potentially having like a small, I say small, potentially having an argument with a friend. Chiron is conjunct this full moon, and Chiron represents our deepest emotional and psychological wounds. So it could be that around the time of this full moon, a friend could potentially trigger you and bring up some feelings and issues that you might have been carrying with you from like your early years. This potential conflict or argument could result in you leaving a friendship behind or cutting ties with a friend. This could also apply to a group as well, where you could feel triggered by maybe some group dynamics, and it kind of reminds you of an experience or an issue from your past that could kind of end up with you leaving a group behind in some way. On the flip side, this could be a time where one of your friends is in a little bit of a crisis, and you're kind of called to help them with something. Just having a look at the planets, I will caution that if there is a friend in crisis around this time, that issue might be quite triggering, or it might remind you of a wound or a crisis that you've had in the past. So just be mindful of that. And if you do decide to help them, just be sure that you have the capacity to lend your advice or your help. This could also be a time where you are second guessing a long-term plan or a long-term goal for the future. You might be wondering how exactly you're going to actualize those goals going forward. This full moon is in a T-square to Mars over in your 8th house. So these doubts or fears when it comes to your long-term plans could stem from something related to shared resources, so a partner's finances or a debt or a loan that you're kind of taking into consideration when you're thinking about your long-term goals as well. Whatever comes up for you around the time of this full moon, try to focus on healthy emotional release if it calls for it. Focus on the things that you can control, and if you do feel like you need support, do reach out to a trusted friend or a family member or just somebody close to you to kind of help support you. Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings. This full moon in Libra will happen in your 10th house of status, public reputation and career. So this full moon in Libra is also conjunct Chiron, which is over in your 4th house of home, family and the past, and it's also in a T-square to Mars over in your 7th house of relationships. So this does look like a full moon where your career and kind of like your career narratives are changing. Capricorn, there could be something that happens at work that kind of puts you in the spotlight, and it could have an impact on your home or your relationship. You might decide you want to go in a different career direction, and that could be something that causes a little bit of disruption in your home or with your partner. On the flip side, there could be something that happens at home or conflict within your relationship that actually has an effect on your career. There could be like a conversation that you have at home with your family or with your partner that makes you kind of realize that you need to change jobs, or you need to kind of think about taking a new path altogether. This could also be a time where you have some conflict with an authority figure. So authority figure, kind of like a boss or a manager or even a parent as well, that could impact how you are at home. So sometimes it is really difficult to kind of separate your work life from your home life in regards to your mood and how you navigate your well-being at home. So this is something that you could become aware of around the time of this full moon. If anything does happen at work or at home and it is impacting your mood and your emotions, try to focus on emotional cleansing and release. And we all have moments where we kind of just need to let things out, but try and make sure that's in a healthy way. If you have like a go-to way of releasing your emotions, so like sport or journaling, do utilize those methods around the time of this full moon. It could be gaming as well. That's one of my stress reliefs. After you've released what you need to, you can kind of return to a space of equilibrium and begin making steps towards changing your career path or creating more peace within your home. So yeah, focus on emotional release and trying to strike a better work-life balance around the time of this full moon in Libra. Aquarians, Aquarius suns and Aquarius risings. This full moon in Libra will happen in your ninth house of overseas travel, the law, beliefs, higher learning and expansion as well. We also have Chiron very much in the picture around this full moon. And we do have a T-square with Mars over in your sixth house of work and physical health. So Aquarians, this does feel like a full moon where you could be wrapping up a learning cycle. If you began studying, especially around October last year, this does feel like this particular learning cycle is coming to a close. If you're dealing with anything related to the law, there could be some news or some insight in regards to that around the time of this full moon. I just want to make sure that I express that this legal update could have an effect on your physical health, so just be mindful of that and make sure that you are taking care of yourself on an internal level and looking after you and your well-being as much as you can. I know having had Mars in your sixth house has not been easy over the last few months, but it is nearly finished. So just wanted to let you know that there is hope on the way. This could also be a time where you do come into contact with somebody, perhaps somebody from your past, most likely from your early years. And this reunion, for lack of a better word, kind of makes you reflect on your own circumstances. You might be thinking, how can I enrich my life through learning, through traveling, through exploring other countries or other belief systems? And you could be kind of having these thoughts as a result of coming into contact with somebody from your past. You might feel a lot more open to new experiences and almost like this urge to go out and have adventures and kind of book a holiday somewhere. You might even feel the urge to study something new as well, and you might want to like look into that and kind of think, what else can I learn? What I would say is that sometimes when we are reflecting on our own circumstances with openness and honesty, it can lead us to discoveries when it comes to kind of what needs to change within our own lives, in order for our lives to kind of feel like enriched and full. And that can kind of sometimes lead to an emotional sit down with yourself. So if you do find yourself in kind of like a reflective state, and you feel a little bit emotional, maybe reach out to somebody like a trusted friend or a relative that can kind of help you almost brainstorm ways that you can feel more connected to yourself and connected to your life in a deeper way. And this can kind of help you take steps towards building the life that you want and the life that you feel like you can really be present in and relate to quite strongly. So do keep that in mind around the time of this full moon. Pisceans, my fellow Pisces suns and Pisces risings. This full moon in Libra will happen in your 8th house of shared resources, intimacy and psychological transformations. So this full moon is also conjunct Chiron in your 2nd house of income. So this does feel like a full moon where you're dealing with things related to shared resources. You could be rebudgeting around this time. You could be rebudgeting with a partner, or you could pay something off. It does seem like if you have any, I'm thinking about Chiron in your 2nd house, if you do have any deep wounds, emotional or psychological, related to things like money and resources and your security, then this could be something that resurfaces around the time of this full moon. Something might happen with your finances that kind of reminds you of an experience that you might have had in your early years, and that can bring up a lot of like triggers and a lot of feelings, and it might feel kind of like emotional and quite heavy. I feel like when it comes to our security, sometimes we don't realize that some of the habits and the narratives that we carry regarding that can stem from our childhood. So this might be a time where you become aware of that around the full moon in Libra. This could also be a time where you could have this real really big emotional release. It might be that you become aware of something that needs to change, like it needs a complete overhaul, it needs to be transformed in some way. And this could be internal, like an internal transformation, or it could be external as well. But whatever you become aware of, you might realize that it has been weighing on you quite heavily. And this full moon is an opportunity for you to, in a healthy way, release things that have been weighing on your heart and weighing on your mind, and kind of begin taking steps towards transforming what needs to be changed. This could be your relationship with finances. It could be some type of internal narrative that you have. Whatever comes up for you, try and liberate yourself as much as you can around the time of this full moon, so that you can move through the rest of the year feeling more emotionally and psychologically lighter. So that is all for today, guys. Remember to like this video and subscribe to my brand new channel for more astrology updates and horoscopes. Also follow me on TikTok and Instagram. They're both linked in the description box below. And leave me a comment with your thoughts and your questions about the video. Happy healing, everyone!